We felt a bit too mature for traditional trick-or-treating, but were still eager to do something fun for the holiday. After brainstorming several ideas, most of which were swiftly discarded, I suggested something different to Leon. I reminded him of the abandoned farm we both knew about and proposed that we explore it. The idea of wandering through an eerie and thrilling setting seemed perfect for Halloween. Compared to our previous ideas, this one stood out as the best by far. Leon shared my excitement, but we both agreed that venturing there on October 31st might attract others with the same idea. Instead, we opted for the night before, hoping to avoid running into anyone in such a desolate place. On the 30th, Leon drove us to the neighborhood adjacent to the farm and parked on the road. We strolled through the neighborhood until we reached the street that transformed into a gravel path leading up to the farm. I had only seen the place during daylight, revealing a vast grassy field with a typical wooden barn and a single-story house. From the edge of the path, neither structure was visible, and our flashlights only illuminated a few feet ahead as we embarked down the gravel driveway. As we got closer, the barn's outline emerged on the left side, with the house farther back at the end of the driveway. Our interest was piqued by the house, assuming the barn to be empty and uninteresting. Navigating through a clearing of tall grass, we approached the house. Passing by some abandoned farming equipment, we noticed large, old tractor-like things left out for years, now engulfed in rust. Upon reaching the porch, it became apparent that the door had been replaced with a solid wooden board. Disappointed, we circled the house, finding every window and door sealed and covered. Returning to the front, we stood there pondering our next move when we noticed a path leading up to the barn. It wasn't an actual path, but rather a line of flattened grass. With nothing else to do, we headed for the barn. A sense of unease crept over us as we approached, unlike the feeling when we approached the house. The large door was wide open when we arrived, and upon entering, a putrid smell assaulted our senses. Unsurprising for a barn, but what caught our attention were footprints all over the ground, not the typical tracks of kids exploring the place. They formed a line, going back and forth from a single point on the other side of the barn. I could see the fear in Leon's eyes, but that was the thrill we sought. Following the footprints, we arrived at a wooden cellar hatch blended in with the floor. The only noticeable thing, aside from the footsteps leading to it, was a shiny new padlock securing the hatch. Before we could contemplate it further, a sudden thud reverberated through the barn. We turned around to find the door had been shut behind us. Leon rushed over, shoved it open, and we both scanned the surroundings, but there was no one in sight. Terrified, we sprinted through the tall grass, back to the gravel driveway, and hurried to the neighborhood where the car was parked. We had certainly experienced the scare we sought, perhaps even more than anticipated. Neither of us dared to investigate what had truly happened that night. A couple of months later, we discovered that the entire house and barn had been sealed off. Despite our attempts to find information, the mystery of what transpired there remained unsolved. In hindsight, Not staying to unravel the truth might have been the wisest decision. Last year, at the age of 16, my friend Leon and I were pondering our plans just a few days before Halloween. It was the fall of 2018 when this peculiar incident unfolded for me. At 22 years old, I found myself temporarily residing on the East Coast, just outside the Appalachian mountain range. Admittedly, I wasn't much of an outdoorsy person and had zero camping experience. The idea of engaging in such activities didn't particularly interest me. However, considering it was my last year in what was probably the best place for outdoor adventures, I decided to seize the opportunity. Opting for a less ambitious venture, I chose a simple hiking trail that promised good views of the mountains. Armed with a small backpack containing water, snacks, and a first aid kit, I arrived at the trailhead. Surprisingly, the parking area was deserted, hinting that this trail might not be as popular as I had assumed. Undeterred, I set off, the serene surroundings creating a calming atmosphere. The path, devoid of recent footprints, wound through a small dirt parking area and into a forested area. As I ventured further, the trail became increasingly secluded, the dense tree cover blocking out much of the sunlight. Although the solitude was initially refreshing, the absence of any signs of fellow hikers began to unsettle me. This feeling of complete isolation was new and unfamiliar. Approximately an hour or two into the trail, I encountered an unexpected sight, a man seated on the side, seemingly taking a break under a tree. Offering a friendly nod and a greeting, I was met with an unsettling lack of response. The man didn't smile or acknowledge my presence. Instead, he simply stared at me for a few seconds before I awkwardly averted my gaze. Uncertain of the encounter, I hastened my pace, hoping to put some distance between us. As I continued, the trail led me deeper into the woods, the surroundings becoming more shaded. About an hour later, I reached the trail's end, an overlook providing breathtaking views of the mountains adorned in fall colors. Taking in the beauty, I marveled at the rare opportunity to witness such a scene. However, as I turned to leave, my heart skipped a beat. The man from earlier was now standing at the trail's end, mere feet away. Startled, I hadn't heard him approach. The unnerving realization set in that he wasn't there to enjoy the view. His face shifted into a smile as he greeted me, inquiring about the scenery. Though I responded politely, confusion lingered. Pointing to a barely visible path through the trees, he suggested an even better view down that trail. Skeptical, I declined his offer, sensing an ulterior motive. Despite my refusals, he persisted, emphasizing how great the view was. It became apparent that his intentions were dubious. Feeling uneasy, I politely declined once more, expressing my need to head home. Attempting to leave, I encountered an unexpected obstacle. The man positioned himself in front of the main trail. Terrified and contemplating his intentions, I cautiously maneuvered around him. Miraculously, nothing escalated, and he merely observed as I retraced my steps down the trail. Each time I glanced back, He continued to watch, making no effort to conceal his gaze. Reaching my car, relief washed over me. I couldn't comprehend the man's intentions or why he didn't prevent my departure. Perhaps he harbored concerns about engaging in something untoward on the main trail. All I knew was that I had narrowly escaped a potentially dangerous situation, grateful to have made it out unharmed.